So Len,
Yes.
could you please give me a bit of timeline of your career and where you started and where you ended up?
Right from the start. Well, I come from Bundaberg, and when it came to exam then, a junior, family, my father was out of work. He worked in the sugar industry and he didn't have any employment at that time. So I left home, I left Bundaberg, I left school, and at 16 I started work, come to Brisbane and started work down here with what was called the public curator, which has since been public trustee. And I spent 5 years down here, and all the time I tried to get a transfer in government up to Bundaberg, but it never happened. So I went back up to Bundaberg and I worked up there for some years, I forget exactly how long, and then I was single, and so I was very interested in computers, which is only starting off in those sort of days, and I'd done a couple of correspondence courses with one with programming, which I didn't like too much. I still don't like programming, but the other one was system analyst. And here again, and talking back in those times, the early 60s, when computers were just starting off, to get an employment in that field, they wanted someone who was probably about 16 and had about 20 years experience. No one was prepared to train anybody. They wanted someone there. So I had the opportunity and I went over to England and I spent a couple of years over there. And I worked with, at then the largest company in the world, Shell. It was a combination of different petrol companies, Shell, Mex and BP over there in London. And at that time, they were into computers, and they had a big computer place out just out of London at Hemel Hempstead, and they were transferring all their records and becoming computerized. And excuse me, I was involved mainly in dividing up the whole of England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland into a grid. I was in what was called the pink paraffin section. That's power kerosene for heating, and so we were dividing it all up so that the records, if you want to know how much petrol or oil in this square mile, you'd be able to get it. So, and that required that sort of work, and then going out to the Hemel Hempstead to do. I didn't work on the computers. I just worked out on the work for the computers. And I also had the opportunity. The people who delivered the kerosene were not highly educated people. They were drivers mainly, and we're trying to get them onto computers. So we had to try and train them in OCR, optical character recognition. So I had to try and teach them you had to write a special way, and their writing skills were not all that good. So I worked with that for a couple of years, and then I come back to Bundaberg, and that was about the time when decimal currency was starting to hear, and I again worked in Bundaberg for I don't know, about another 5 years or so. Then I went back to England, and I was still single, and I went back to England, and I worked with another oil company, which it was Conoco, which was later a Phillips oil company, which was at the time about the fourth largest in the world. And I worked with exploration there. I found out a lot about exploring for oil, and it was an unusual situation in that company because it was an American company, and all the senior executives were American, but all the next level and everyone was British, were English. And being Australian, I was a sort of go-between because they didn't seem to have quite a good understanding or relationship. So in fact, I only intended to be in England there for a time, another couple of years, but the director of exploration, who's American, I was only temporary, but he wanted me to be his assistant. I said, well, no, I can't. I want to go back to Australia. But I said, why pick on me? You've got all these English people. So there was a talk about their relationship. And again, I worked on computers. It was worked on it. That's right. I worked with the output of computers, where there a lot of work, not just on exploration, but in the treasury side, and of there, which I found interesting because I found that I was investing $100 million and that sort of thing just overnight, and I hadn't realised just how much money you can make just overnight. And in those days too, you'd work on say whatever 3 and 15/16ths of it. So all I had to do in that part was just late in the day, just ring around all the places, see where I could get the best interest rate overnight, and that was it. I only had to work for an hour. But that was the American company. That's why they didn't. It's not filling in the time like the English worked from then to fill in the time. The Americans did the job. So from there, I was still there, and through a long, involved thing, which I won't say here, it's too long. A friend of mine who was medical superintendent at a mission hospital in Thailand, him and his wife came from Bundaberg too, and in a long way around they knew me, and he'd just become medical superintendent of the hospital, so he wanted someone like me to come to Thailand to organise the hospital and administer it and that sort of thing. And so he asked me if I'd go to the hospital. And I had no idea about Thailand at the time, but I did. I went there, and the previous medical superintendent had been a genius. You know, he was a doctor. He could get in and do a minor operation. He could dispense medicines. He'd go out and organise building a house. And he was the new doctor. Was a good doctor, great doctor, this friend, but he didn't know that side. So I came in and had to organise all the administrative side and that sort of thing. So I spent a year there, and then I came back here, and working. When did I go there? I come back to Brisbane to start with, and then I went back to Bundaberg, got a job up there, went back there, and then I went over to visit these friends in Thailand, and that's where I met my wife, and again, all business, we got married, and come back here, and I come back to Bundaberg. But the strange thing was, my cousin was getting married, and they lived out at Wellington Point, and he was getting married, and after the wedding ceremony, they came up, the corner of the council building, right on the corner there, had some photos taken in there, and my wife, who'd only been here not very long, few months, she said that seems a nice place. Wouldn't it be nice to work here? And within about 6 weeks, I was.
Oh wow!
And then I worked. I worked here in different areas. I started up, started up the accounting, financing. Started most of the things that would develop later, like say the computer. We had that, and that was taken over. We had the audit, and that went personnel. That went most of the things of that type were there, because you still had the health, which was handling a lot of the things, and the engineering, they were still very much separate.
Mm.
And so things just developed, and then after a while, I was probably hesitate. After a while, I gained the displeasure of my general manager, and he decided that he was going to transfer me, and he did. But as it turned out, it was for the best, and he transferred me from there to the planning side, financial planning, and working on new stuff, because we went through all this idea of supplier, purchaser, activity-based costing, all these sort of things we were going through, which I enjoyed, and quite frankly, the smaller group I enjoyed much better, and what he thought was something against me.
Mm.
The problem, well, if you want to know, the problem came that when he started, he decided to have this customer service area. We didn't have that before.
Mm.
And he decided to start that. And he was recruiting people there whom he was saying would be the elite of the council. And I got off side with him, because I was saying that you can't say that they're the elite. That means the other people who worked here all this time are just ordinary, which he agreed. That's what he said. They were just ordinary. These are the elite. So that's how I got off side with him. As far as studying goes, the first time like when I came down here when I was 16, I was fortunate in that the public service then encouraged us young people to study, whatever you wanted to study, and they would pay half your tuition fees up front, and if you passed, they pay the rest. So my first degree, the accounting, I virtually got for nothing, so I don't say too much about these university students now, but so that's where, and I got that. All of us had started something, but I think I was about the only one that went on and went through with it. And then after that, I studied for secretarial, chartered secretary, and then later on for the masters. But then at the time, the local government was different. You could get a local government clerk certificate. I studied and got that, and then you could get a local government auditors. So I went and got that. But both of those out now, no one wants to know that you got to, because in those days you had to have a local government clerk certificate to be a local shire clerk, or that, which now that bypassed.
So how many years were you at Redlands?
26.
26.
A bit over 26.
Wow.
I went past retirement age there,
Yeah.
because, I enjoy the work, and even now I'm perfectly healthy. So
You're very well.
yeah, I don't. I often feel like a fraud that I feel as fit as I did 16 years ago or more, 20 years ago, and but I don't have to go out to work in the morning. I can sleep in the morning.
Especially on a day like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that answers how you got into local government and those things. Do you have, I guess, what do you enjoy doing now that you have a bit more time on your hands?
Well, my weekday, I try to. Well, I don't try. I do. I maintain a 5-day working week. My weekends are different, so that I don't have this monotony. They're different. But my working week, I'm a Christian, and I take that seriously. So in the morning, I have Bible reading every morning. Then I do some mental puzzles. I do Sudoku, crosswords, all that sort of thing to keep my brain active. I speak Thai and I know Thai, and every day I keep up the standard on that. I spend some time on the computer, and there's an organisation that does computer thing on there. Well, they do program, but I don't look at that. I do that. I then have a time of I sit and watch the news, but then the afternoon is pretty free to do work around the place that I need to do. But I enjoy reading. Probably I never read novels, although I've written 2 major ones.
Have you?
And 2 for kids, which I've not published, but I've written them because I wanted to do that. I read non-fiction because I remember things, and I don't want to remember things except good things. I usually have probably about 4 or 5 books on the go at any one time.
Wow.
Because I don't want to get monotonous. And so that's virtually how most of it, apart from any other things that might come up. But now that I'm old, I do, we do go to church things for older people, although I don't enjoy going to too many because it's a bit demoralising when you go to see someone and everyone around you got grey hair. But otherwise, I enjoy that, and I keep up with the magazines from the Accountant Society, the Chartered Secretaries, and local government. I keep up to date with all that, and I just fill in the time. And I exercise too. We go for a lot of walks and that sort of thing, so I'm active too.
Well, walking around Ziggenviews, it's actually a long way away.
It is,
so, yeah. Okay, and when you were working, who were your role models?
Within the council?
Oh, wherever.
Sorry, I didn't have anyone.
You didn't have anyone?
People say that. Role model. I suppose, well, to be honest, I suppose, I had an anti-role model. And I have to say
important.
This general manager that came in from outside. Not that was the point. I was determined I would never be like him. And even though this is on tape,
we won't mention his name.
No, even though it's on, if I ever had the opportunity of meeting him again, I wouldn't. He treated the people there so badly. He used to go into his office and sit on the computer, and no one ever knew what he ever did. So that was it. There was some people. I liked some of the councillors were quite good. I liked working for them. I liked the councillors who challenged us. There was one councillor only one probably in the whole time, who the council thought he's a rabble-rouser, a nuisance, and in fact on a couple of occasions the mayor had to have him taken out of the chamber by police. But he was the only one that ever said, "What's this on the accounts? What's this for?" I've always found that the councillors didn't care very much about the money. They had this idea, we want to do this, we do it. So I didn't have any that way. There were a couple of councillors were too nice to be councillors, but I got on well because I told them what I thought. In fact, I told one councillor, I said, "I think you think more about koalas than you do about human beings." And she replied something to the effect, "Well, I give money to any organisation that will stop people overseas having children." And no, I think I would hope that they appreciated my honesty.
Yeah, okay. So what big, I mean, obviously a lot, but what big changes did you observe in your time when it come to regulatory changes or political changes?
Well, I said, well, the truth is I introduced so many new things into it, and we could see the evolution. If I can just take, say, the rating area, or even on the rating area, everything was kept handwritten when I first went there. We had these great, enormous books where they'd write in. Well, we progressed, well, I was progressing from that to mechanical machines that did it. We went on to electronic machines and then on to computers for that sort of thing. The rating is similar. We went from cards onto a bureau, onto computer. All these things were developing within the council, and still, I think it came down still giving good service. I always tried to give good service to the public, and that was what I thought our duty was. But the biggest thing was Bay Island. That plonked on, and that I think was not. Well, it was for our area. It was the biggest, enormous thing, but I think it also affected other things like the health and engineers and all that. It did affect them, and they grew too. You would find that back in the early 70s, the staff just went like that. Then that was probably the biggest thing would be obviously be that part of it.
And do you have any highlights that you really remember?
Well, again, no one. I mean, there's so many things. By and large, I enjoyed the time there. I mean, I wouldn't have stayed if I didn't. I enjoyed, and what I like so much is I was able to. See, I'd worked in commercial organisations in Bundaberg and overseas and around the place, and the good thing here was you could use your skills and not have to worry about the profit motive. And you could do things for people you don't. There wasn't, apart from maybe one or two things times, I was never called upon to even think about anything dishonest, which I didn't do. I better not admit that, but I was they tried to persuade me on a couple of occasions, and I said no. So, but that's out of 26 years there, and it was all good there, apart from just a couple of things.
And any lowlights? So the worst thing about a local government career? Maybe the abuse.
Or not really, just human beings. I mean, I saw far too often decisions were made, but to me were not logical decisions. They were, with the council, it was always votes. With rating, we used to rate annually before sewage and all that came on. We used to rate annually, and the mayor, one of the other councillors was a supporter of the mayor, trying to persuade him to rate half yearly. Well, we were able to show back in those days that would cost $500 million, $500,000 to go that way. But he still went on. They didn't care, and decisions were made that way. I can remember one time too when, with the budget, I should say the mayor at that time, he was a despot. He was authoritarian. No one disagreed with him. So in one way it was an advantage to that, because I could go to him and say, what are the rates going to be for next year? He'd tell me. I wouldn't have to work it out. He'd tell me. But one time, because of some things he wanted to do, he put in the budget a figure for rates that we didn't even levy. It was not right. But no one would disagree with him. I mean, I didn't have the power to tell him off. And that was what I just didn't like. He knew it was wrong, and I knew it was wrong. Probably not many others did. But I think people being human beings, like they'll say, "Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, how's that going to affect me?" You know, which is, I think, it was a wrong sort of attitude. But no, there wasn't much there. It was.
And as an executive officer, what worked for you in working with other people?
Well, with me, I think best thing is to be honest, and even though it come up through, let's say, from a finance, where people say things about accountants, I don't like that. The best thing is when you come there and forget about, in some cases, what may look like. We always do this way, is new ideas of saying something. Again, on one occasion, I said something when there, which was not to be taken at face value, but caused a stir. I said, "What about if we think about how we can work so that we don't have to levy any rates at all?" And of course, I knew that never happened. But all I was trying to do was to prompt someone to say, they're thinking, "Oh, maybe we can raise money other ways," and not just say, "Oh, well, we rely on rates. We want money. We rate the ratepayers." That's all. But that sort of brought the house down. You can't say that. That'll never happen, and that's that sort of thing. But it was just a prompt. But I like working with people where you can sit around and say, "Yes, well, this is this." I didn't like the times when we had auditors there. Not that I did anything at all, and anything can check on me now. I didn't like the auditors there would say, "Oh, well, if you do this, it goes over the budget." I think, well, okay, well then we get more budget. They always seem to be a wet blanket. I didn't like. Maybe that's it. I didn't like any meetings or any where people were wet blankets. I like, again, so talking about that other chap before, Rod. He'd always say something, and I had always had regular meetings with all my section heads, and you'd have yes, and so, well, no, disagreement. Someone do something, right? And you'd have people there that are very good at what they do, but one particular chap who was in charge of one area, I often think even now, looking back, not once in the whole time of working with him did he ever suggest anything. So mainly, we work with people who are willing to have different ideas, think about different things. Get rid of this idea of what accountants are supposed to be, and we just concentrate on this. That's not what I am anyway. I really just like that sort of thing. Get fresh ideas, no wet blankets. Let's talk about it as if this is something we're interested in.
And what did you have to change about yourself or your approach along the way?
Well, the main thing, I think, because of all the moving I did, and say when I left school early, I was not that there's anything wrong with being an introvert, but I was more oriented on the task. Like even went to England and working on those, I had the task to work on, and I think what I had to do, and which some feedback from people I still talk to, I had to change more to a people person, which I'm not. I admit that. I mean it all the time, so it's not a problem for me. I'm not a people person. I'm a task person. And learning to be a people person, because I had so many people, I think one time about 120 people reporting to me.
Wow. And
having to be with listen to each one, and that it was a bit hard sometimes.
Draining, yeah.
Having one of the young girls come and sit and crying. I mean, I mean, where do I learn about that? You don't learn about that going to university. How do you deal with a young girl that's crying? You know, and but that sort of thing, I had to become a people person. That was the biggest change. And I did it. They say I did enjoy it when I got this tossed out by the general manager, put in a different area, because we worked with a small group. I knew what I was doing. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I thought he'd done the best service because if I had have applied for it, a position there, he would have said no.
Yeah.
That was good. That was a good part. Yeah. Yeah. But I had to change to be a people person or a task person.
Yeah. Okay, that's a big change, isn't
Yeah.
it? And what was the most difficult part of your role?
Well, the most difficult, I think, came towards the end when we're getting into these different types of structure. And in fact, it was a reason why I left, because I was perfectly healthy and could have gone on. No one was going to sack me or anything like that. What was it? We were in the area of going to policies, our policy area. So I was sitting here and responsible for the finance area. I was the purchaser of the supplier.
Oh, yes.
And they had to do these policies. Well, sundry debtors, we don't have very much. I mean, the rates is not debtors. It's things like someone buys a grave plot or something like that, or gets something. It's a very, very small part of the account, very small part of finances. It's sundry debtors. But the next one on, the policy part, wanted a policy. So I had to get the finance section to do a policy on sundry debtors. And they'd come to me. I'd go through it and say, well, that's okay, I pass on. No, this is not there. I'd come back to me. Then I'd have to go back to them. Then I'd go back, it'd come back. And this policy on sundry debtors was just getting way out of hand. It was so small, who cares? You know, it's not important. I mean, rates policy, yeah, but this is not policy. And one day, I was upstairs in the Bloomfield side, up the top floor, and I could look out across Bloomfield Street at the people on the other side of the street, and I thought, I just wonder how much what I'm doing now is a real benefit
Of that
to them.
Yeah.
I'm just wasting my time. If this is all I'm doing, is just, this sort of thing is not important. I'm not saying that rates or all that's not important, but this is so unimportant, and it's taking up their time. It's coming to me. I'm going through. I think it's okay. It goes on policy, whose job is just looking at policies, nothing else. No, not constructive to the council. What they do, and I better not tell Gary Patina, he's still there. I like Gary.
Yeah, I used to work for him.
Did you? I'd say can't go and tell Gary. It's important. But they keep on coming back. So I thought, this is it. What am I doing here? And that was what prompted. That was the low part, I'd say. Is the reason I left, because I was happy. I liked what that part did, the planning part and all that. And I was a big fan of which I started the activity-based accounting and all that sort of stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I could see so much potential for what we were doing, but this, I don't know whether it just got me, but I just thought, this is enough, I can retire. And so I did. And that was the only low part, the really low part, that I didn't even try to get out of from that, was that towards the end. That's what prompted me to go. But as I see, I didn't think that was part of local government. See, what we tried to do too during the time, particularly with the budgeting, is to consider things like, we've got a flow chart. What are the things we have to do? Okay. What are the things we'd like to do? What are the things which ones of those can we do? Which ones can't we do? And we try to do the flow chart to do that sort of thing. And all this was so interesting, and I really enjoyed it. I like the task part of it, but it's the things that saying all this stuff doesn't really make any difference.
No. Yeah. And so what was the best thing about having a local government career?
The fact that I could use my skills without having ulterior motive of thinking about the profit type part of it all the time. I was able to go do a lot of accounting work and say all these different things that I've been talking about with the computers, getting it in there without. So you know what? I could not have got a position in another company because I didn't do any programming. Although I'm trying to learn a program at the present time, so I wouldn't be able to make it, and the age then when I would not have let me in anyway. So I was able to do all that, and I was able to follow my career and all the things I was interested in, like say with activity-based account. I could do that. I could read that, study that. I wouldn't have to account for the time. I certainly wouldn't want to go into public practice because there you have to write every 15 minutes or something of what you're doing. I just enjoyed the freedom that I was able to do all that I wanted to do within local government there, and it's a good opportunity and for anyone to come in. But really, I think anyone I would advise that come in has to have the idea that they're doing something for where they are. They're doing something. I mean, just like I say, look at what you're doing. Is that going to help anybody outside there? Is it doing something for them? And I saw that some of the things wasn't doing it for them. Admittedly, some of the things do not flow on. Like when say one time early on about the swimming pool. The swimming pool was put up, and at that time the schools didn't have them, and there weren't as many people here and with their own private pools. So the swimming pool say, okay, that's something we provide. But as the years went on, fewer and fewer people were using it because they were getting their own, but the cost per ratepayer was going up. We were able to say that to the council, okay, we worked it out, and that's going up. But they made a decision to keep it going. Well, that's fine with me, but we just show them what it is.
Just the decision needs to be made.
A lot of places, like in health, for instance, and the library, we could show that as far as expenditure is concerned, their expenditure was shooting up like that while everybody else's were going like this. We would report that to the council. The library people thought we were getting at them and saying, oh, it's too much, you have to cut down. That was never the intention. This thing is saying, okay, that's how much it costs. Because each one of us in our own lives think, well, how much is it going to cost? If I buy a car, oh, that's okay, it's going to cost me $20,000. Yeah, but wait a minute, you've got to register it, you've got to put petrol in it, you've got to have maintenance and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we were saying.
Yeah.
With library, for instance, they have a terrific amount of computer costs.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's part of their cost. If the library wasn't there, that wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And that's all we were doing was saying that's how what these cost.
Yeah.
Now, which council, you make up your own decision.
Yeah.
About that sort of thing.
What to do? Yeah. Absolutely. And the last question before we do the video bit is: has it changed? Has local government changed?
Yeah, I think it has. They've got more freedom, I think, than what they had in the past. But I do think that it's from my aspect, I'm talking from here, not to anybody else, with the idea of bringing in contracts, then I think that has changed the picture quite a bit, that it's becoming commercial. Well, okay, that's a decision they wanted there. But when the other idea of having a job for life, that was not so great either. But when you have someone who is on a contract, whatever it is, 3 years, I think it's been well and truly proved that by about a year and a half into it, they start looking at their next, what's going to happen next. Are they next going to get this job, or they're going to go over? So there's this gap, I think, of where their full intention full attention is not being directed at their work. Again, I just say in my opinion, but I certainly don't believe that. In fact, I've been in some of the people I've had. That's been a problem. You can't get rid of someone if they're there. That they're. I shudder at some of the thoughts, but I think that's one of it, and it become more commercialised. I don't think it needs to be. I think I don't think it should be like every other business around. It is different. They keep on saying it's not different. People, academics and all that, saying it's not different, but it is different. You've got a different mindset. If you want to be wholly involved in local government, you have a different mindset. You're not continually thinking about this profit.
A different set of values.
Yeah. You're thinking about here. You're thinking about what am I doing to help here. A company couldn't care less if they sell something. If well, I don't think they can. Cigarettes, just not sell cigarettes. They don't. They're not really thinking about what it's doing harm or it's doing there. They just want their profit, and that's not what you got in local government. You do have a different mindset, and you should have a different mindset. And I just don't think that there's enough interaction with the public. I think the public should be more involved. I do not think that it's right for someone to ring up and say, "Oh, that park over there, you haven't mowed it for 3 weeks," which is happening all the time. Well, okay, why don't you go over and mow it? It's your park, you go over and mow it. But there's not that. It's always the council does it, and they don't have this interaction in that all the money the council has is your money. There's no separate money. Let the council do it. Let the council do it. Well, why isn't there some interaction with it? I mean, again, we're talking about the councillor before who asked questions. There was only one person outside a year back who would go through the accounts for the fine-tooth comb, and we love that. I mean, he wrote to the paper a lot and complained, but I got on very well with him because, and all of us did. It was his money. Yeah, all of us did, because you could say someone's interested. I mean, we prepare the accounts, we prepare the budget, everything's finished. Does anyone thank us? Never. Never did anyone thank us for doing the budget. Never anyone did think. Not that you got used to that, but you need this interaction with the public. The public is there. Tell them things. Let them come in and see what's going on. Don't have this we and them. And that's, I think, which is missing a lot. I mean, I think a lot can be done to bring the public into, because now, again, it's not like 100 years ago where we are clever and they're ignorant out there. There's so many people outside are a lot smarter than some of the people in the council.
Agreed.
And there should be this interaction. You have the opportunity, because we're not trying to con anybody out there, not trying to force them to buy something. We're here to serve them. And that I think we should be doing that, not just sitting behind a desk somewhere.
Trying to avoid them. I agree.
And say, okay, well, who are the complaints this week? Now, how many letters of appreciation do we get? We did get a few people, particularly with our rates collection. We were trying to collect it, but then there were a lot of people who came in. I've had people come into me and thank me for not being tough, but making them face the realities of what the situation is. Not just saying, you owe $5,000. When are you going to pay it? Say, well, okay, come in and we'll talk about it. How can we do things?
Let's come to an arrangement.
But it's to be a service. I mean, it might be an old-fashioned word. I don't care. Service is there, and that's what we're here for. And as long as there's this barrier to say, well, we'll serve you our way. Let's come in and see what it is. Come in and have a look what we're doing. We've only got this amount of money, and it's your money. If we spend it on there, we can't spend it here. You make up your mind what you want. It's just not. I think we have a big opportunity. Local government has a big opportunity. Forget about this idea about a business. Forget about it's the same as the other place. We're not the same, and we should act differently.
That's good advice.